Welcome to The Real Life Buyer. In this podcast, you will discover interviews with procurement and technical experts, business owners, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders. These experts will help you to develop and grow, accelerate your career, improve your business, save money, and buy smart. Now introducing The Real Life Buyer, Dave Barr.
Hello and welcome to The Real Life Buyer. Today, I'm extremely pleased to introduce you to Laura Cortes. Born and raised in Mexico, Laura moved to Shenzhen, China in 2009 and now helps entrepreneurs find, develop and create products in this giant of a manufacturing country. Laura has a degree in international business, is an APEC certified business consultant and speaks Spanish, English and Mandarin. Laura has extensive purchasing and supply chain knowledge from sourcing products ranging from clothing for high street retailers, toys to mobile phones, and is extremely knowledgeable about product quality testing. So without further delay, I welcome Laura onto the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No, absolute pleasure. And another purchasing professional. Very pleased to have you on board.
Yeah. Happy hearing. I'm super happy being here.
Lovely, lovely. So perhaps you could give the listeners some of your history, of your working career and what brought you to this location.
Actually, I came, part I didn't plan it and part I did plan it. For the longest time, I wanted to go to Germany, actually. That was kind of my goal because, sounds cool, Just go to Germany. When I finished university back in Mexico, I was working already for a few years because I started young. I started working very young in business since I was like 20 years old. So at the time I was 24, I already have 4 years of experience. And a very good friend of mine, he called me when he was coming back from Malaysia, back to Mexico. And he's like, Laura, have you ever thought of going to China instead of Germany? And I was like, no, this is not in my mind. Like, I'm in the other side of the world, definitely not. But then a scholarship program that now is no longer available, but it was available back in Mexico. They were given a scholarship to learn business precisely. And the idea was to give higher education to Mexicans and this somehow help develop more business between both countries. So I applied. I was like, okay, let me see how it goes. It took a year. It was a long process because only 10 people were allowed to come. And I was selected. And 2009, I sold everything I had. I had like $150 in my pocket. And I was like, wow, let's see what happens. And 12 years later, I'm still here.
You actually really cut the ties then, didn't you? There's no going back.
The plan was to be here only for 2 years, which was the extension of the program. But being here changed me, like, for the better. And it opened my eyes to bigger, like a wider audience. Like, my mind expanded because I met people from all over the world. And I just didn't want to lose that. So I stayed here. And also, I knew since back in the university that business was going to be very important in China. It still is. So I wanted to develop my career and I saw the opportunity to do it here. And that's why I'm here. And I had a chance to work with very cool companies so far.
Excellent. So you mentioned your career. What kind of steps did you take to move into the world of purchasing?
So my first job in China actually was a sales. I was with a Spanish company that manufactured helmets. And they gave me my first job. I was quite nervous about it because I had no working experience in China. I did have in Mexico, but not in China. So it was hard to find somebody that would give me the chance, right? But they gave me the job. Unfortunately, the company was not doing so well. And I was like, wow, I did not expect that. So I had to move on. It was hard because they were very nice people. We're still good friends until this day. But I had to find something else. And by chance, I met Salvador, a guy that owns, at the time, he was one of the co-founders of a licensed company in Mexico for mobile accessories. And they needed to find somebody that will develop new products for them and that was knowledgeable of the country, the culture, and do purchasing of products. And we met, we got along very well. He saw the potential in me because it was also kind of my first role as a purchaser and as a developer. And I started working with them, and it was very, very cool because I got to work with brands that are quite famous, like Hello Kitty, Lamborghini, DC Comics, all for licensing for Mexico and Latin America, some of them. And it was a very good experience. I was doing that for 4 years for those brands, and that's how I started it.
Brilliant. That's some nice names you've got there. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I particularly like the Lamborghini one.
Yes,
so if you could swing me one.
Yeah, we were doing for backpacks for the whole school season. Lamborghini has some like computer bags and things like that. So they used to develop that brand over there. Also, I did work for Boy London as well, the brand in Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so there's a chance, we say, that people are not particularly familiar with doing business in China. We all receive Chinese products, but actually doing business is another game. So what would you say are some of the sort of main cultural and behavioral differences that one might expect than you would normally see in the Western world, let's say?
As a purchaser?
As a purchaser, yeah.
I guess one of the biggest difference, there are so many. It will be hard to choose, I guess. I would say the way we communicate is very different. And probably the key point that suffers, if you don't have good communication or you don't understand how to communicate with Chinese suppliers or with Asia overall, I feel that it could bring you a lot of problems where you're developing a new business, especially the part of saying yes and saying no. Sounds a little bit silly, but in the West, it's quite clear if we say yes or we say no. I feel, like if I ask you a question, it's super easy for you to tell me yes or no. Same for me. But in Chinese culture, it's extremely hard for them to say no. And in business, honestly, when I discovered this, it opened my mind because I used to have business negotiations, and it was amazing the times that I got a yes, but they actually didn't mean it. Like nothing happened, I was like, what's going on? You told me I was able to do this product. Like, why not? Or you told me it was this price. Why are you changing it now? Why you didn't tell me no before? And then slowly I realized that it had to do with two things. The language itself, the Chinese language, and the way it's spoken, they don't really say no. They actually agree with your question. If your question is negative or positive, they will say, yes, you're right. So if you say a negative questions, they will still tell you yes, because you're right. So that was something that would be one of the biggest difference that I can see, and that I feel is the most important, how we communicate. The rest, I think, is quite standard because we all care about the same thing, which is doing business, having profit, having the lowest cost, has the best quality. Those values in the sense of business-wise, I think is completely the same. But the way we transfer that knowledge in order to get something done is very, very different. I work with Chinese people in my daily life. And even now, sometimes I struggle to make them do something that they didn't tell me no. They just say, okay, or they say yes. Or sometimes they don't say anything at all. And I'm like, so are we doing it? Are we not doing it? What's happening? And writing emails has something that went down a lot in China. Like it's hard now to get emails back from Chinese suppliers. And it has nothing to do with they don't want to communicate with you via email. I think it's more to do that their technology is so advanced and so on the phone, like they have WeChat here, that they want to reach out to you on that platform, they want to engage in a more personal communication than email. So that's extremely hard because WeChat is not as popular outside of China. It's more WhatsApp, and WhatsApp is also blocked here. So communication gets tricky, right? If you're in the West and you want to do business with China, download WeChat. You will get way more answers via WeChat than what you will get via email, for example. But there are limitations. Another key is, I think that there is a misconception now that everything in China must be cheap. This is still this idea that if you are finding a product or you want to purchase a product in China, it has to be extremely cheap. and it has to be, quality is getting better. I think the perception of quality is definitely getting better, but it's just not going in the same speed as perception as what the cost of this product should be. And there is a lot of people that still struggle to understand that you will not longer find the cheapest in China for the quality that you want. So a lot of people now, I tell them now, it's like, listen, you will get for what you're paying for now. You want cheap, you will get a cheap quality. You want a high quality, learn to negotiate with them to get the best profit for you. But let's be realistic about that, especially because places like India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Philippines are rising, and they offer really, really cheap options, right? So that's another big difference, or at least misconception that I can see between the West and in China.
Okay, that's really interesting. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I want to tease out the communication one. And we all know the saying, seek to understand and be understood. So what techniques do you use to try and clarify the message, both the message you're giving to the supplier, exactly what you're exactly looking for and their perception of it, and equally a clear message back, as you say, whether it's yes, no, maybe, whatever?
Yeah. So at the end of my sentence, in English, it's clearly not my first language, but at the end of the sentence, I use Chinese grammar, so to speak, because in Chinese grammar, at the end of the sentence, you write correct or incorrect. Well, is the meaning of it. So now when I really want to get an answer from them, I say what I want to get, like, are you going to do this correct? And then they will have to answer me correct or not correct. I force them a little bit. So at the end, I just want to know if they agree with my question or not.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. If they agree, I'm right. If they don't agree, then I'm like, oh, okay, then you're going somewhere else. And it has worked, actually. It has worked that I'm getting to understand more and more what they're thinking and how to express that. And also, if I want to get a specific, actually, I don't expect answers now. I more tell them, hey, I want this at this time, this quantity, this price. And then they will just come back to me and tell me yes, no. It's easier if you already tell them the structure of things in communication, rather than in the West, I guess. We imply a little bit more. It's more because there is, for a lack of a better term, I will use common sense. There's a little bit more of this. So that will be the way I manage.
That's really good. Yeah, I've in the past, well, I'd say the past, even now, then I try and repeat back to them my understanding. So this means this, and this, and will happen by this time, this date, this whatever. Trying to be very prescriptive. I like the word you use, correct, at the end, though. I haven't used that before. So that's a good tip. Yeah.
Yeah,
perfect.
No, absolutely. You should definitely ask them at the end, is what I'm telling you is correct? And if you still feel that the supplier is not 100% getting it, what I do is that I'm like, so what did I say? Could you please explain to me?
Yes.
And they will just tell you back, because, and it doesn't matter if it sounds like you're talking to, it's a different language. It has nothing to do with being smarter or not. It's just that our language defines how we think and how we communicate with others, right? Mm-hmm. So we need to understand that their language is thousands of years old. It's very descriptive, and we don't have the same phrases. Yeah. So we need to be very, very simple. The grammar is very simple. Therefore, the way we communicate with them in grammar should also be very simple.
Yeah, no, perfect. The other angle I'm interested in, particularly as you're somebody who's negotiating as well, is how do you perceive that Chinese business professionals now react to so we should compare women versus men, young people versus older people. Do you see there's gaps now still there, or do you see everybody being treated in a uniform way?
Well, there's definitely still a gap. I don't want to get much into the policy of the company, but I can definitely have not the company, the country, but I can definitely talk more about the culture. There is definitely still a big gap. There is still a lot of pressure for women, especially to be, get married young, have kids, a lot of cultural pressure. Like a 26-year-old girl is considered already quite old, which I still think is outrageous, but it's part of the culture. And you don't find many women in high levels in companies, in Chinese companies. I can honestly tell you that in my 12 years of being here, I have only met 4 women that have directive positions, and they're like badasses. They are like very, very smart. They are very strong. They are definitely no average, not something that you get to know quite often. Right now, I work with one that I'm quite close, that we have business for testing products, and very smart woman. But even herself, she's like, there are not a lot of women in here because it's hard.
Yeah, you have to work at peak performance to really make your mark then. Yeah.
Yes, and also like, for example, young and older generation, something that used to happen a lot, and it still happens, but not as much, was that people will rotate a lot in business. Actually, human resources in China, there's a lot of improvement, but people change jobs quite often. So they give a lot of incentives to the employees to stay, especially to younger employees, but they really don't last. They really want to move really fast, and they wonder why after 1 year they didn't get like a raise, or they didn't get like a promotion, even though maybe they didn't make a lot of effort. So, or maybe it's just not the right time, for the company to give you the raise. So they move a lot. There's a lot of rotation within young people, and unfortunately, young women get a lot of pressure. They get like one job, they have 2 jobs in their career, then they get to get married, have kids, they have a gap there a few years without working, and then try to go back. And that's the biggest difference, I guess, that I've seen right now between younger and older generations. Because when I came to China, actually the goal was to work and save as much as possible and to keep working. Now they don't really save as much. They are spending more, especially with this fast fashion that is happening everywhere.
Yeah.
So they want to move to jobs that pay more, so they can buy more things, and it has changed a lot. I don't think it's different from the West in that sense.
No, but I guess it's that high expectations now that it's like all young people, they think it's going to happen tomorrow and it's going to be easy.
Correct. And it's so fast in here, to be honest. Like here it's so fast to do things, to change, to travel, that is unrealistic, to be honest.
Okay. So I know from experience, obviously, sourcing suppliers in any foreign country can be a challenge, but when there's significant language barriers. So if you receive a brief from a client, what would you say are some of the kind of proven desktop techniques that you use to, let's say, form a reasonable lineup, a first cut of potential suppliers? What things do you do?
Well, first I will have a talk with the client. I want to get to know what their goal is. And especially because as a sourcing expert, a lot of people have reached out to me all this time. And the first question that I get is like, what can I buy in China that can make me help to do business? Especially entrepreneurs have this question. And I'm like, I will be honest with you. If you don't know what you want, probably you shouldn't be like sourcing yet.
Yeah.
So the first thing is that I want to talk to them and try to help them to have a clear picture of what their goal is. Because there are a lot of people that want to do business, but they don't know how to have that like graphic representation of where they're going. And if they don't have this, it's just not easy for us to source or to purchase the product that you need for your business. So the first thing is to have a clear idea of what you want. If you say something like, I would like to buy a phone case, I will be like, okay, which one? Like which brand, which material? There are so many questions around a product because you have to be very, very specific. And I compare this a lot with marketing. When you do marketing, you really have to have your target about your client. It has to be the same about your supplier. You need to understand everything around your product, and so you can target the right supplier and you can have the right cost for you. So after I have this conversation with the clients and I have a clear picture of what they want, such as the price that they want, the quantity that they want, the exact product that they want, where they want to sell it, how often they want to like purchase probably. Then I go and I'm like, okay, I have a clear picture of where the product is going. Now I need to find the right supplier. And then I get to find the suppliers, maybe 5, 6 options top, because if you keep looking, you will end up seeing the same things. And I narrow it down there based on locations, based on prices, and based on certifications and expertise. So I can then, from that pool, select.
Yeah. Because obviously China is such a vast country.
Of course.
Is it easy to pull out? Is there like a Google search in China, or what equipment and techniques or contacts you use to tease out all those potential suppliers?
So a lot of people know Alibaba as the one that international Alibaba, which has the English version. But there are like a lot of Chinese websites that only work within the country. Obvious reasons, they're only in Chinese, that we use, me and my team, that we use them. We can check based on their location as well. And one time it was very hard to find a product. Let me remember what it was. It was for a specific backpack. Actually, I was looking for a specific factory that we couldn't find. We just knew the location, like the area, but we couldn't really find the factory. And what I did is that I used Baidu, which is like Google in China, and I use Baidu Maps. And there I discovered that by law, all of them have to register online for the mapping. So I just went to the location, I drop a pin, and I checked the database of the factories around that area. Boom, I found it. So sometimes we do those kind of things, So it's super easy to find online information. You just need to know how to use these tools in order to find the info.
Yeah. So let's say you've drilled things down to a degree. Let's say you've got 5 supplier potentials.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you don't want to necessarily jump in the car or a plane to go and visit these people. They could be anywhere. So what's your next level of cutting the wheat from the chaff? Would you put together very detailed tender documents, or what do you find is the best way in China to do that?
Oh, absolutely. Tender documents. I'm a big fan of that. I usually narrow it down. If I have 6 suppliers or 5, I do a supplier analysis. Actually, I kind of design my own Excel sheet where I rank each supplier based on the criteria that I want. And the ones that have the best ranking, on those I invest the most. And I create full profiling, especially if I have to do this for a client, not just for a product of my own. And before I jump into any plane, I'm like, send me a sample. I'm not going to waste my time without seeing the product first, because I don't want to jump into a plane, invest all of the resources, or have my clients coming from other countries coming to those resources. And then they see a product and it's just not the product that they want.
All right.
So I get the sample first. I'm a big fan of samples, probably because I've seen so many horrible stories where people like just jump into it. And I'm like, oh my God, like you didn't see the sample.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised how many people are not willing to pay for samples.
Yeah.
Like, there really are a lot of people not willing to pay for samples. And to me, I'm like, if you're investing $10,000, don't you think $100 sample for 2-3 suppliers is like worth it, just to avoid the headache of having a mistake? I think it is. So I get into samples and then I select it and I have meetings with them. Once I'm 100% sure that this is a supplier that is a potential supplier and I want to negotiate with them the prices.
Yeah. So let's say you get some samples, which is great. What happens though if the product that you're manufacturing needs tooling to manufacture the part? Let's say it's a plastic injection molded part, and sometimes tooling can be pretty pricey. So do you just ask for typical parts that they injection mold now, for example, or how would you assess the potential quality without having the actual part there? Yeah.
So what I did created like assembling the manufacturer. And one of the things that makes so expensive to do this assembling is actually the mold, the design of the mold and producing the mold, right? So for a while, I was like quite worried about that, because I was like, how can we control the cost? Sometimes it's not even the material to produce the product, to manufacture the product, but to invest the mold, especially if it's new, right? If you're doing this, it's because your design is completely new. That's definitely the case. It's not even the design, it's to do the mold. It's heavy, it takes a lot of parts. Probably if your product is complicated, you might need like 5, 6, 10 molds just to manufacture one product. So it's expensive, it's a big investment. And I was able to locate an area in China, in the south, that has a lot of factories for molding, to create only molds. So we spend a lot of time sourcing and talking to them just to get to the right ones. And we did advise the client, listen, if you're going to make a product from scratch, the reason why you need a mold, do your marketing research. Like be sure that this investment is really worth it for you. And also try to design it in a way that when you do upgrades for next generations of your product, the molding doesn't change that much, at least not for a few years. So your investment can be recovered. We do projections like that. Otherwise, you're going to invest in a mold that probably your product will have a lifespan of 1 year or 2 years, and it's just a lot of money.
Absolutely. And they can be thousands of pounds, some of these things, can't they?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So let's assume now you're down to 2 or 3. You've got some money, you've got some samples, you're pleased with the options. But now it's probably a time for, let's say, a formal visit or an audit of that company. So you want to establish facts. You want to see for yourself that they're actually doing the things they claim and so forth.
Yeah.
So what activities would you sort of undertake next to give you that sort of confidence in their ability to supply your client specs on time and to budget, whilst also meeting perhaps business principles that you find important to obviously yourself, but also your client? Such things as equality, people welfare, environmental factors.
Wow, that's a long question. So I would visit the factory 2 times. I will visit the factory before I try to negotiate anything, just to make sure that it's there. And I will do a previous audit, which will be like, where are you located? Where you told me you were located? Do you have a business license? In this case, maybe because I'm here, I know how a business license look like. I know what a real business license look like. And not many foreigners, or at least not many purchases from abroad, really can see these licenses. So I know how they look. So I definitely go for the legal documents just to make sure that they're there. Also, I go for their certifications. So actually, it's public knowledge. Like if you have a company that has a certification, it should be in the database of the CB that issued the certificate in Europe, in Europe. So confirm that this information is available. And then I will go when they're starting to do the manufacturing, just to make sure that everything is going correct. And probably one more time before they do the loading of the container, just to be sure that everything is right. That in the sense of how the manufacture goes. In the sense of more ethical, it's extremely hard. It's extremely hard to catch this. I will give you 2 examples. One example was with Puma. I have a meeting with Puma last year because they do a lot of, a brand as Puma, they will not have their own factories, right? They select suppliers and they are like, okay, now you can manufacture in my name. And we have a meeting because we work with them for testing their products, the shoes, and we do chemical testing for the shoes. And we also do inspections. And Puma was saying, like, I'm having a problem. Sometimes I accredit a factory to work for me, and they send the samples. They pass the test quality of the samples because Puma exports all over the world, and Europe, USA have very strict standards of quality control for this. And so they caught that even though they will use a percentage of the products using the right materials or the approved materials, and they will pass the testing, they will still sneak some like low quality materials to produce in a lower cost and save money, right? So he's like, so it's really hard. It's really hard for big companies and brands to catch it. So they start creating a system, and they will instruct all the labs that work for them to create surprise audits in the middle of the manufacturing, so they can cut this because it's extremely hard to catch it. So they're working. There's a lot of effort from the private sector to try to avoid all these things and all these scandals that we hear on TV.
There is
an effort. There is an effort, but it's hard for them because at the end of the day, it's not their factories. They cannot control everything. And the second story that I have, this was, I guess, the most traumatizing one for me, so to speak, because I was doing headphones. And in this case, I cannot mention the brand, I'm sorry.
Sure.
But it was for a brand as well. And they were doing, no headphones, they were doing chargers for like for the plug-in. And the manufacturer was very late. And the company that I work for, they asked me, it's like, Laura, we really want you to go and check. We trust you, please, can you go? And I'm like, okay, no problem. Where is the factory? Oh, it's in Guangzhou. They told me that. I mean, Shenzhen, Guangzhou is like the capital, very close from here. I jump into a bus. I go to the city and I arrive to the address and it's just an office. And I'm like, so is your factory around? And they are like, oh no, it's in another city. And I'm like, which city? 8 hours by bus. And I was like, tell me which one. I said, I would just go to the airport. Oh, no, there is no airport. I was like, what do you mean there is no airport? They're like, don't worry, we will like take you there. I'm like, okay, fine, but I'm not going alone. I'm taking somebody with me. And I took a Chinese friend with me, and just to be safe, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, let's go. And they drove 8 hours into a city that was like a town, actually. It was a town. For China, it's like a big thing to say it was a town. I don't want to do the story so long, but it took me 12 hours overall to get to the place, because at the end it was a village of 500 people. That was impossible to get there. Even the road was like just like 2-way road. We got there. It was like a village that they used to do like tea, I think, because there was a lot of tea leaves getting dry. And they walked me to the factory. And the first thing I see there is kids.
Oh, no.
Little children working in the factory doing these chargers. And I was just speechless. I was just in shock. I was like, what's happening? And I turned to my friend, and my friend is like, he gives me signs like, don't, like, just don't say anything, you know? And I was like, okay. And I can see them doing the product, you know? I can see them doing the product. And I was like, but there I am, a foreigner in the middle of nowhere. What can I do? So I was like, okay, so what's happening? I came to see about this order that needs to leave. It's late. It was before Chinese. It was going to be Chinese New Year, so there was either
right.
And it was like a lot of money involved, like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So I was like, we need to do something about this. So they bring the big boss. We talk about the problem. We negotiate. He's like, don't worry. Just because you make the effort to find me, he says that to me. I guess nobody went there before.
Yeah.
Don't worry. I will make sure that your goods this day, you'll be there, they will be there. I was like, are you sure? And they even offer me, you can stay, we will give you. I'm like, nope, I'm leaving. Like, I took photos. They didn't let me take photos with the kids. I just took photos of the product. I was there until very late. And it was just outrageous. So I left. Finally, I left. They did deliver the goods, and I gave my report, and I called the person, and I was like, listen, you need to know this. This factory is lying to you, because they give you a different address, they give you a different everything. Probably when you came to visit, they took you to a different factory. And now when I was really searching for your product and I couldn't find your product, they finally took me to the factory where they were producing this, and it's a kid factory. So just stop producing, just don't do it. And they did stop. They took they did the right thing and they stopped.
Yeah.
But this is something that we cannot. I mean, what can we do? As no matter how big your company is, there's nothing you can do if the government allows something like this, or they ignore, or they don't see. It's just something that happens. It's less and less. I haven't seen anything this again. Every time I've seen other factories and my team, when they go and visit factories, it's fine. It's more about quality control that are like, oh, the design was not the best. But something like that, only one time I've seen it, and I was very shocked.
Yeah. So it just shows the importance of due diligence, as you say.
Correct.
Don't take it as read. You see videos, you can see all sorts of different things. As you say, you can even visit a place and be sort of hoodwinked into thinking you're at the right location.
And I don't want to, with this story, I don't want to like sanitize the country. Like, I don't think this is something that is just in China. I think this is a problem that happens everywhere, and especially in countries that depend a lot on manufacturing. Mm-hmm. The demand is huge. They need to somehow to manufacture. And also, I just one thought that I did have with this experience was like, if it was for me with the resources, the knowledge, the team to get there and visit, I can only imagine for a kid that lives there, how hard it's going to be to get out of there. What kind of living are they going to have? So probably working there is the only source of income that they have as well. So it's just a very gray area in a very tricky situation.
Yeah, very difficult moral dilemma in some ways.
It is.
Yeah. But it just shows how important it is to get the right people to go and audit these companies. If they're not your own staff, then definitely good, well-qualified, reliable companies. And
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I always tell this to the people, listen, if you are going to buy, especially now, if you're not like being able to come to China, get somebody that knows what's going on. Not just in China, everywhere. Yeah. Go anywhere that you're doing business with. Just send somebody that you trust, that has like the knowledge, especially the knowledge of the place, and then move around, because you can be amazed of the things that you can find.
Yeah. One of the things I've come across in the past, shall we say, is when there's a misalignment between what the client often wants and how things should be, so we say, measured or aesthetically, particularly aesthetics, evaluated against what the supplier's interpretation is. Now, what kind of techniques do you use to bridge that gap, to make sure there is a synergy between the two levels of understanding?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think there will be never an island of understanding what aesthetic means. I think they're what is aesthetic here is just not the same that is going to be aesthetic in another part. It's just it's so different, the culture, that I don't think we can align that. However, that doesn't mean that they don't understand what we need. I think the tricky part here is to let them know that even if you think this is ugly, I have said that to manufacturers. Listen, you think this is ugly? And they say, yes, I don't care. I'm selling this. And sometimes I even have lied to them. Like, I don't even like it myself either, but this is what my client wants. And as you know, client is important. And they respect that a lot. Something that it's very helpful to understand is that in China, do the country style of government, they respect a lot. How to say it? Sorry, my English kind of gone. The hierarchy.
Hierarchy, yes. Yeah.
Hierarchy, thank you, of people. They respect that a lot. Like, they respect elders, they respect teachers, they respect their bosses. So being a client also gives a lot of respect in a company. So if you explain to them that is client requests or it's client requirements, even if they think something different, they will respect that, because they understand that this is how it's requested. So something like that I use a lot. Like, I explain and I use those tricky points, I guess, to make them understand what I want. But it's just not the same. It's just, for them, it's just not the same. Sometimes they use some things, or they like certain things, and I'm like, I just don't know why you like them. And I don't think I will ever know why you like them. But somehow it works for them, like the fashion and everything. It just works for them, but it's just not the same.
Yeah. Myself, I've grown to use more and more video, more and more photographs.
Absolutely.
I've got experts, or quality experts on my side, having a video call while the supplier measures the equipment, so they can make sure there's an alignment in the techniques they're using, the equipment they're using, how they're going about it. Sometimes the order in which you can measure things can make a difference.
Which kind of product is like this?
I'm dealing mainly with machined products.
Okay.
And so there are very specific ways you can measure things, but there are sometimes you have, should we say, more accurate techniques and less accurate techniques, but they're measuring the same features. So I try to make sure there's a fundamental alignment between that, and they can visually see what each of the others is doing. And if you've got the luxury of getting people together, even better, because you can, particularly when we talk about aesthetics, then you can discuss it and you can kind of get some more closer alignments and absolutely get some approved samples, some signed off, identified samples as your masters, for example. But it can be tough. And no matter how many times, sometimes you explain it and agree it still comes back different. But there we go. That is life, I guess.
One of the things that we did for when we were doing a machine, this was like 6 years ago, and we just couldn't go to the place, and we really need to check that the things were going on. We did a 3D printed model.
Okay, good.
We did a 3D printed model of this machine just to make sure of when we see it visually, because as you said, they cannot do a sample of a machine, right?
Yeah.
So the closest thing for me was a 3D model. I would just assemble the pieces and it's like, okay, yeah, this
really
is
good.
getting close. So that's something that we do too.
Absolutely.
And it's very cheap to do that here, to print, to do 3D printing. Super
absolutely
cheap.
It's getting commonplace in most places now. There's usually somebody, even I know friends who've got some of these at home and they tinker with them at home and they make things for themselves. So that's the kind of level we're getting to. So
yeah.
Let's just talk briefly about the negotiation. Obviously we're all trying to get best value and such, but what kind of techniques do you see the Chinese suppliers using with you when they're trying to barter for price?
Oh, actually, they're getting confident. They're confident about their products. They're more confident about what they can offer. And they don't longer, and there is still a lot of demand of Chinese products because of the time that it takes to manufacture in China, especially during COVID. China was supplying a lot of things that were not being manufactured somewhere else. So I don't think it's as easy as it used to be when you will just go there and I'm interested. Now it's getting harder. It's even getting harder to get quotations from them sometimes if you don't show that you're a client that will actually buy. So one of the things that I starting to do is that I now, those renderings that I used to do, those documents that I used to do for my clients, I'm doing it for manufacturers now. And I offer a very professional presentation with my goals, with what I want and how I'm going to do it and I want to do it with them. And now I'm more focused on the quality of the product. And once I get there, if you can understand the materials that you're going to use, you move into the cost and you give them options. You give option to the manufacturer, or you are open to options with the manufacturer to give you 2, 3, 4 prices options. So they have options in the quality as well. That's something that I've been doing and has improved, because before, if you go as somebody that probably doesn't have a lot of experience, they might give you one price that you might think is okay, and it might not really be. So definitely sit down, check what the product is made of, the cost of it. Of course, they actually still talk a lot about it, like, oh, these products don't like this, and then have options of prices. So you can like negotiate with them, because it's getting harder. They're getting more, they're confident. They're confident of their capability. They're confident of their quality now. A lot of good quality things are out there that are Chinese. It's no longer like cheap China. Like, again, I still see on social media, sometimes people complain about how Chinese products are like useless. And I'm like, are we talking about the same country? Like 60 years ago, they were nothing. Now they have the only international space station. So, so take that into consideration when we talk about quality, So they know they have good stuff. So take the time to talk to them. Yeah.
Good. Do you use cost breakdown models in your work, like an Excel breakdown? Yeah.
Yes, I do. You have to. I do it since I talk to a client to understand what they want. I definitely do. I create sometimes my sheets according to what they need. I personalize things because I need to understand the cost. At the end of the day, it's about profit, right? It's about making business. So definitely do a breakdown cost with the client and with the manufacturer.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. So I see we've soon be coming up to an hour which is amazing because I think we could talk for hours ourselves on this.
Yeah.
Before I go on to last question or two, what's the best way for people to be able to contact you, follow your work, see the kind of sort of things you offer to your clients?
Yeah, sure. I have my website. You can contact me through my personal website, lauracortes.net, or through my working website, which is olingoco.com. There I have a business blog where I give all my advices about how to do business here in China. I also will start launching next year some online courses where people can have access to this. And I give a lot of free resources as well. And they can also book time with me to talk about certain products and advise them on how to do it. Or if they have a problem, they can also come to me. That happens a lot too. They're like, Laura, this happened. I'm like, it's okay, don't worry. Let's see what can we do.
Brilliant. Well, what I'll do is I'll make sure that all the links are in my show notes for us. So for people listening who want to, follow Laura and find out all about her work, then I'll make sure they're in there. So we'll make sure they're aligned. Okay, so let's just finish off now with perhaps two things. Contracts. I remember when I started going out too long ago into China, they were very reluctant for contracts at that time. They didn't like written contracts. It's more about person-to-person contact. Is that still the case now, in your opinion?
It's changing now because of the whole COVID thing. Like, they do business on dinner. They close business when they're having dinner and they're having a drink. That still happens a lot. They're way more, especially big companies, they're way more willing to sign contracts. So the tricky part here is what kind of contract you will sign and how you're going to sign it. So this is my advice to people that want to sign contracts. Do it in English and Chinese. Okay? Like, if you only sign in Chinese, it's completely useless. Like, it doesn't work. So do Chinese and English, and don't agree on, this part of the contract with, if we have a problem, which court do we go to? Don't accept anything in China. They will agree on third country party, and they will agree Hong Kong or Singapore. And these places are actually quite okay. I have a case of a client that actually sued me. and they sue me. They didn't sue me, sorry. What happened is that they complained with PayPal because they paid to me through PayPal. But actually, I did deliver the sample. I delivered everything. They just were like, I'm not happy with this. And we were willing to talk, right? There's always problems. And I was like, let's talk, let's solve it. They didn't want to. And we really tried to reach out, and PayPal, which actually now after this, I recommend PayPal to my clients. They have this like client assurance where they get the money back if you're not happy.
Yeah.
So PayPal reached out to us and they were like, hey, this customer is complaining. We explained, we send the photos, we send the evidence. PayPal, they still side with the client. And it was not even a lot of money. It was like $1,500. And we were shocked. It was like, oh, wow. So that happens. And we are in China. The client is in the US.
Yeah.
And what we did is that we went to Hong Kong. We went to the court, just like regular house court, that anybody can walk in. We pay 100 Hong Kong dollars, which is like $20 or something like that. We presented a case, all the evidence, and the court is like, okay, sure. They notified PayPal in Hong Kong, and we had a hearing.
Yeah.
And PayPal said, don't. Then they reach out and they're like, oh, yeah, actually, we recheck again. Actually, you are right. And they pay back what they took from us, plus the expenses that we declare for going to Hong Kong So this is something that happened. And what I learned from this experience was like, I definitely would recommend PayPal. Like, if you're going to be somebody that is going to do international business and you want to be safe, even though it's a little expensive, the fee and the exchange rate on PayPal, use it. Now I know by experience that it actually works. You're protected. Yeah. And even for me too, because I am protected that, sometimes you don't have good customers, and, we can have a legit conversation with PayPal, I guess, through court, but it's there. And the second thing is that when I sign contracts with big companies, they're way more willing to sign contracts in Chinese, English, Hong Kong, and Singapore as their parties, for sure.
Okay, one last quick question then. It's been fascinating, this conversation, so thanks for this.
Yeah.
you want to maintain and nurture relationships.
Yeah.
Particularly, obviously, you're getting well with the supplier, you're liking the product, they're on time, to budget, etc. What kind of things do you recommend to your clients to make sure those established relationships continue to grow and prosper?
You said it before, they like relationships. So definitely try to be not very formal. Don't be formal, actually. Like Chinese people are like, they're not formal. They like to build relationships. They like to have friends as well. They're very social people. So if you want a long-term relationship with a manufacturer, get personal with them. Be your friend, get them to be your friends. Say, hey, how's your day? Like, what are you doing? And that will give you a lot. Generally caring. And this is just not with Chinese suppliers, with anybody. I think if you generally show care for somebody else, this person will respond back to you and in a positive way.
Yeah. So where you can, if it's possible, to have those face-to-face relationships, go out for lunch and, as you say, just talk about what's going on in the world, whatever. But you start building a friendship in some ways.
If you're not able to travel to China, like just one day message them, hey, how you doing? I hope you're well. And take a 10, 15 minutes conversation. It's fine. And if you do come to China, respect their lunchtime. They will they will appreciate that you respect their lunchtime, which is between 12 and 2 p.m. because they need it. They respect a lot lunch and they respect a lot taking a nap. So if you're a workaholic, hardcore worker, take a break in that time, respect that about them, and they will also respect your things, and your work.
Brilliant. That's great advice, Laura. Thanks for that. Well, I've found this absolutely brilliant. I really do appreciate your time. So, obviously you're a long way away. We're having a chat on Zoom, but we've had a great conversation.
Yeah. Thank you. It was very fun.
Yeah, I look forward to keeping in contact with you.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. You take care then.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Bye.
So there's another Real Life Buyer podcast. I do hope you enjoyed it and it's given you some ideas and inspiration for greater action and achievement. If you are a purchasing or a supply chain professional, business owner or director, come and join my Facebook group, the Purchasing and Supply Chain Community Hub, a safe place to engage with like-minded, friendly people. See you soon. Bye.